And we are live. Welcome, Tim Wagner. Is that the right way to say it? I am honoured, and it's my great pleasure to introduce Tim Wagner to our podcast today. And we are going to talk about. We're going to talk about. Go, Tim. Take it over. Take it away. I've just lost my mind.
I think maybe you're experiencing exactly what we're talking about, which is
Overwhelmed. That's right.
Burnout, and it's all about how the mental wellness in the workplace is just an absolute pandemic and affecting so many people that they're not actually able to perform. Then one of the things is you can't think rationally, you can't think simply because you're just so stressed, anxious, and it leads to burnout. That's so perfect. We're talking. Yeah.
So I gave the example really well. I've just flown back from my last gig, come up here, turned on StreamYard, gone in, and then you weren't there. And so this is the kind of thing, in a way, that can affect us. So today I am really, really happy and honoured, as I say, for Tim and I to have this conversation for our viewers and to be able to talk with people about what it's like, what causes it, what happens when it comes up, and what we do when burnout and overwhelm comes up in the workplace, or preferably to prevent it from happening.
That's it. It's such a key topic of conversation. It leads on beautifully from the World Health Organization's World Mental Health Day, which was 2 weeks ago, but they've sort of designated World Mental Health Month. And it's been so nice for me to see the amount of conversations happening this year around this exact topic. Having a look at saying that where companies are turning around and saying we need to have a more holistic approach to the wellness and management of our teams, of our staff, not only executives, but everybody. So it's been very enlightening to see. It's not often that I'll agree with the World Health Organization, but this time I actually do. It's quite interesting.
Absolutely. So Tim, carry on. Carry on, please. Please go ahead.
There was one bit of research done, which Gallup does annual report on the. I can't remember what the exact title is. I'll find it just now. But on employees in the workplace, and they do a lot of studies internationally around the state of well-being, on leadership, on wellness, on various things in the workplace. And their research they put out recently, this was only a couple of months ago, is that they're identifying that 76% of employees experience burnout at some point in their job, in their career. 76.
Wow.
Now, that really brings it home as to the importance of identifying what do we do about this? How can people work understanding this? It's a big problem. But here's the key questions, though. And this is what the personal experience as well, if you would like, I'll share a bit of my story.
Yes, please. So I was going to ask you, please do share your own experience.
When you are sitting in a state of near burnout, and there's sort of 3 steps, I'll talk to you about that before you get to that point of burnout. When you're sitting in that state or close to it, very rarely do you actually know you're in it.
Right.
So if you have a look at the C-suite, the executives, they're hitting that point of burnout, especially this time of year. Everybody's ramping up their final results because they've got to perform before Christmas and they want to get their bonuses, and it's all the pressures, the sales numbers, all these things. It's intense. How are you, if you're not able to identify your level, your state, how are you meant to identify your subordinates? How are you meant to help them if you are in that state already? That's the difficulty I see. And I see this more and more. Right. As a leader in the business, you want to be able to help and be a great support to your team, your subordinates, your other managers, whoever it may be. But if you're not able to manage your own life, how on earth are you meant to help them?
Mm.
When I was, this is a real challenge that I've seen. So what I end up by speaking about is what we can do as individuals, not only to help identify for other people who are sitting in a position, be it your executives, be it yourself, whatever level you are in, but also how do you actually go about trying to reduce the impact of this on ourselves? Because it affects our entire life, home life and work life. I remember the days, I don't know about you, but I remember the days when I first started working that you were told what happens at home stays at home. What happens at work stays at work, right?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
But it's a load of nonsense. It's the same. How are you meant to leave your home stress at home and not bring it to work, and leave your work stress at work and not take it home? What are we, robots? So you've got now the understanding that there's a big connection, and it's not about mental wellness in the workplace. It's about mental wellness in life.
Mm.
Because one will impact the other. Yeah. Karen, when I was working in corporate, in a high-paying, high-stress work environment for many, many years, that it resulted in me walking around with brain fog. Literally, my brain was not able to operate. I'd wake up for the first hour or 2 hours. Don't try and have a conversation with me, because I was still in sleep state because I wasn't sleeping. I was going to bed anxious and stressed, and I was waking up anxious and stressed due to the alarm clock. I now call it an opportunity clock and not an alarm clock. An alarm is a shock to the system. And I was not able to operate, not understanding that I was actually heading very rapidly for burnout. I didn't have at that point an understanding what burnout was. And I think a lot of people sit in that, they don't know what burnout is. I didn't have a name for it. I knew I was living in a stressful position and environment and job, very active, very performing 24 hours, 7 days a week business in hospitality. So I knew I was stressed, but I had identified myself as a high-stressed, high-strung businessman. And I believed that that was what kept me going, was that consistent stress. So I identified myself with that, not realizing it was actually becoming my downfall. So it got to a point where my family life was suffering hugely. My relationship with my wife was it wasn't a relationship. It was really not fair. My relationship with my son as a teenager, then he was a teenager, was almost non-existent. My relationship with my client base, with my staff, with the employees, the manager, even the MD of the company that I was running, was on very, very shaky grounds. And I started to see the signs and realized something's got to change. So I went and approached the MD. And I said, basically, I sat down and I said, I need help. I don't know what's going on. I'm tired. All I could think of was saying was, I'm tired. Couldn't explain it in any other way. Looking back now, I realize that he did not understand what I was saying. Same as I didn't know what burnout was, he had no idea. He had no idea to see the signs that the guy he'd employed to run his business or businesses was on the stage of burnout, and he actually needs help. He needs support. He didn't know that. And so it ended up by a huge clash, huge fight, and a very unpleasant exit from my very dramatic exit, because he took it and he said, I don't trust you anymore.
So Tim, what leads up to that? What do you think causes, and what's the lead up for people to get people to that point where, like you say, you're not rational, you feel tired, you feel overwhelmed, you feel exhausted. Actually, more than tired, usually it's exhaustion. Even if it's at
Mm.
some point of the day, you might be okay in the morning, but by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you just can hardly operate, hardly keep your eyes open if you sit down for a while, or that
Mm.
kind of thing. What causes one to go from someone who's working normally quite well and coping with life and coping with work to that situation? What's the cause of it?
There's three stages, three sort of steps, and it begins with stress, the constant pressure in a stressful environment. So that's sort of the stage one. And majority of people in business operate at some point of their day in a stressful state, stressful situations, stressful presentations, staff situations, stress at home, stress at work, stress with the traffic, stress with government, stress with paying their taxes, whatever. So it's that constant stress state is the beginning stage of it. When you're in a consistent stress state and not allowing yourself the chance to come out of the stress state, then you form into the second one, which is anxiety. And the difference being that being anxious or being in a state of anxiety is not triggered by a specific situation. So you don't have to have a stressful circumstance or experience to be anxious. Anxiety is that consistent, persistent, excessive worry and absence, even in the absence of a stressor.
Mm.
So you're
Mm.
consciously you're continuously anxious.
Mm. We
Then the
talked about
next stage, right? It's like levels. The next level down is burnout, is where you're in that anxious state consistently, where now burnout means that you have that complete mental, physical, and emotional just crash. We try and run from it and avoid it, but here's the thing: your body will never allow you to run from burnout. It will check you out at some point. It will turn around and say, "That's it," and it'll
yes.
crash.
Mm.
It will literally crash. And
Yes.
26% of people who are at the state or stage of burnout end up by being hospitalized.
Yes.
Those are
Did you?
statistics.
Did you? Did
No,
you? No.
no, fortunately not. I knew that something was wrong. I saw that the business was suffering, family was suffering, and I just couldn't carry on. So that was my end result of me avoiding the deep burnout, was me walking out. And it was 2018, it was April 2018. I just walked out and I said, I don't know what else to do. I'm leaving. And I threw the keys to the business at the boss, and I picked up my bag and I left. It was 10:30 at night. And I remember driving in my little Jeep. I had to stop by the road. I got out and I sat on the tarmac because I hadn't got a clue what to do.
Wow. So in a way, your employer, the CEO, did you a favor, in fact, by ending up saying, I don't trust you anymore and having you leave, even though it was tough at the time. He did you a favor. I just want to say hi to the people here. We've got Andreas here with us, and Latu. And Latu has said she recognizes these three stages you're talking about, Tim, and
Wow.
became burnt out, leading to crashing into sickness herself. So
Yeah.
fabulous fabulous that you're both here with us, and thank you for your honesty around that, Latu. So yes, I agree, Tim, that with stress, here's the thing: is that stress, as you know, and Latu knows, she's a nurse, that it's an intrinsic reaction we have to stress, where our body starts forming chemicals, the chemicals that allow us to run from the coyote or run from the lion that's chasing us, right? Going right back to early days. And yet with stress, we don't run. So the natural reaction is to run and get rid of those chemicals out of the body, when we're in stress. And what happens is, in modern day, we still get the chemicals. Our brain is a chemical factory. We still get the chemicals, but we don't get to get, when we run and use our energy in a way, when we're running from an animal, it allows our body to get rid of those chemicals and pass them out, and of course, and change into more appropriate chemicals in our body. But we don't do that. So what happens is those adrenalines and corticoids and things build up, and cortisone is even more dangerous than adrenaline, I believe, although I'm not a doctor. Hi, too. We've got someone else on here. And that's part of the danger that happens from stress. And then, as you say, anxiety, which is fear of what's going to happen in the future. And like you say, it's all the time. People walk around in a state of anxiety about everything all day long. And that is together with the build-up of chemicals and the pressure it puts on our body, and usually raises our blood pressure, which is also very unhealthy, all add up to that burnout that makes a human body so sick that it often has to be hospitalized. The person, the body, as I say, has to be hospitalized. So it's a very serious situation. And yet you're saying that 76%, was it, of people now in the corporate world are suffering from this condition.
That's according to Gallup's research, which they launched in 2023. Yes.
Wow.
One of the big questions that we need to ask ourselves is, with the changing dynamics in the way that we're doing business, with a very big lean towards the hybrid work environment, how much is this now affecting it?
True.
Whereas
it's a good question.
And this is where you've got companies which are looking at the hybrid work environment, but are they actually skilling their people to be able to, you can say, switch off? Isn't it? I don't believe there's a switch, but being able to manage that difference between what is work and what is home, when now it's one and the same. And as a self-employed person for many years, it is a very, very difficult and different work environment. I get, before I had the different dynamics, and the wife and I understood, because she also worked from home and I worked from home. Now you're both working from home, you're living from, so do you actually ever switch off?
That's right. That's a really good point. And I can remember talking with other entrepreneurs and people who work from home about how, like one in particular I'm thinking of, about how they actually did have set up that situation for themselves, so that mentally they went from one room to another when they went to go to work. And so they told themselves that they were switching off the home life and into the work life, and vice versa, and really had to be disciplined around doing that so that we didn't. And I know for myself, I've been self-employed all my life, and I had a business that I was running for 25 years, but I would bring my work home and bring my go onto the computer or do the spreadsheets and things like that at home, and always thinking about work and never switching off, like you say. And that's another very serious problem to people who work from home, because there isn't that definition unless we make sure that we put structures and systems in place so that we do create that definition. And so it's something to be aware of for people who work from home, whether it's for a company where they share home and go into the office sometimes and work from home, or whether we work from home 100% of our work time. It's something to be really aware of, to be disciplined enough to switch on and switch off, and have the downtime and the time off, and then the work time. And it's super important to be working on that and aware of that. So Andreas says, here's the thing, it took someone to tell me that something was not quite right. thank goodness I listened, because it's far too
Right.
easy to fall into a state of denial. Great.
Yeah.
When he's saying great points, Karen, about being able to switch off. Yes, and this is so true, because we don't think about it again. So we don't know that we're getting near burnout. We don't know that we're in burnout. We don't even know often when we're suffering from anxiety or stress, and how dangerous that is. And we don't often put structures in place that serve us.
That's it. And Andreas, thank you for that comment, because it really does lead into, then you had somebody who understood what the signs were. So how could you identify in one of your colleagues, bosses, teammates, that they are stressed, anxious, or on their way to burnout? And that's a key thing to differentiate and understand. There's different, as there are different levels, you'll be acting differently. And if you've got somebody that can understand these are the signs, they can then warn you and say, Andreas, you're on the way to burnout. You need to do something about this. You need assistance, you need help, you need a break. Because it's not a matter of saying, take a week off from work. That's not what it's all about. Because you're already in that anxious state. You're now away from work, but anxiety is remaining persistently in a constant state of worry. So you're still going to go back to work after a week anxious, because you're not getting down, breaking that down, and helping the mind, body, soul, spirit to be able to reset, revitalize, and just give it a refresh. So here's a couple of things very quickly to look at if you're saying, well, how do I identify if somebody's stressed? Irritability, anger, fatigue, they're tired, they're complaining, they're tired more often. Can be muscle pain as well. When you're stressed, you might find that your neck and shoulders, because you're breathing from here, you're often more hunched, that you get a lot of stress, and even going to have a massage won't eliminate that, because it's the muscles protecting. Difficulty sleeping, more ill than normally, digestive problems. So these would be typical signs of somebody experiencing stress. That's how you would see the stress. Versus anxiety, they will be demonstrating these, but even when then there's not a stressor in their environment. So it's a normal day, there's no meetings, no big deadlines, there's nobody around them giving them the things which normally make them freak out and get stressed, but they're still experiencing that. That's remaining in that constant stress situation, leads to anxiety. Then when you look down and you say, well, how do I identify burnout? This is different from being tired. We're now talking about absolute exhaustion, depleting of energy. They cannot get up in the morning, cannot stay focused in a meeting, cannot find that ability to even just get going, where now they're very distant from the job. So whereas before they were very energetic or passionate or enthusiastic about it and have comments in meetings, whereas stress, they're angry. Burnout, you don't have energy to be angry, because anger requires a huge amount of energy. You say, I don't have the energy to be angry anymore. I just give up. You're lacking desire to do projects or be involved, or learn anything. And I think one of the biggest tells is listen to somebody's language. One thing for them to say, sure, I'm tired. The other one is to say, I'm just not sleeping. I'm absolutely exhausted. I can't think straight. Listen to their language. I don't care anymore. I really can't be bothered anymore, whereas they used to be. Those are your signs of going for burnout, where the body does not have the energy to fight anymore. Whereas stress is that fight, fear, fight, flight. Breathing here, that's your sympathetic nervous system. That's where your fear, fight, flight. You got that, as Karen says, the cortisol and adrenaline, it's pumping and it's moving. Burnout, gone. No more energy. So if you're identifying any of those signs amongst your colleagues, your teammates, your bosses, that's where it's very good to have it identified, so that then they can actually turn around and do something about it, so it doesn't have to go explosion like my circumstance. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree. Listen to them and ask, what's going on for you? How's how yeah, what's going on for you at the moment, Tim?
Mm.
Because sometimes people won't tell you unless you ask. When they're at that point, they don't think anyone cares. They don't think anyone else is interested because someone in burnout is not really interested in anyone else. And so they won't often voluntarily speak up.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that often in that situation, as Andrea said, and that was me as well, I didn't know I was in that situation.
No, they don't know.
I knew something was wrong, but I didn't have a label for it.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
And Andreas said earlier, he said, oh, I get that, Tim. 2 years ago, I simply had too much on and had to take a step back. And the first thing I did was remove people who were adding pressure, which is a great point. Two is saying, hi, Karen and Tim. And Latu says, these things that we're talking about lead to cancer risks. And I agree, other risks of health, because our bodies are not made to withstand that kind of pressure, that ongoing change in our physical, in our chemical makeup. Two says, totally agree, Karen. Working from home is very challenging these days. I have different hats so I can remind myself working, family, and personal time, which is a great idea. And Latu says it's very concerning. Oh, where's that gone? It's very concerning in a workplace where the managers simply don't care and they aren't empathetic. And I don't know if Latu's talking about the hospital, but I know that some of the hospitals are so short-staffed that is a common ongoing problem, where the people who are staffing and the people who are doing the staff rosters and the people who are above, at the next level up from those working on the floor have such a difficulty filling the staff requirements that they don't want to know if you're suffering from burnout. They can't risk someone coming in and saying, I have to have time off because I'm, tired or anxious or suffering from burnout. And so it's almost turning a blind eye to make it easier. And please don't think I'm criticizing the system. However, it's a real problem. I agree, Tim, a real problem.
It is. Yeah, it is, unfortunately. And this is where, Latu, you need to turn around and ask yourself some questions. Well, why am I here? Because if you stay in that situation, you will hit burnout, you will crash. As I've said right at the beginning, your body's it's going to hit time out, and it's going to at one point say, that's it. And now you're either going to become a patient in your own hospital or you're going to have made a very, very difficult call, which is what I had to make. And I realized that, but this is not good. It's not good for me. It's not good for the business. I can stay here, but then I was already making mistakes in that position, in that state I was in. And I could see the mistakes I was making. Whereas before I would never have made them. So it was a big decision that I had to make, and turn around and go, yeah. So there's Latu. I did crash, and as a consequence of, I've reduced my hours. Right. So we see the signs, and this is where the awareness and the discussions that we're having now with Karen, that a lot of corporates are having, and that the Gallup survey and the World Health Organization are bringing it more to the fore than it ever was before, because the World Health Organization also has declared burnout as a pandemic. It is identifying burnout as a real physical thing, not just something that happens to the executives in corporates. That's identifying it. And these discussions need to happen more so that the leaders, the managers begin to understand, I can keep making Latu work the hours because I've got to fill the roster, I've got to fill that. Or they can turn around and they say, well, if I keep doing that, I'm either going to have somebody who's here for 40 or 45 hours a week, or I'm not going to have anybody. Not easy. So what do we do about it, Karen? What do we do in the situation? What do we do, man?
Even just prevent it before happening.
Right.
Prevent it before happening, because it's better to be at the top of the cliff than at the bottom, right? It's better to be, yeah.
Exactly.
So what are some? I've got my suggestions, but I want to hear.
Go ahead, please. I've been speaking loads. I want to hear Go ahead. Okay. I'm going to add in.
Okay. Well, mine are some practical suggestions, because the main obstacle that keeps us from operating without anxiety, stress, and burnout is the whirlwind of everyday activity that we all have in our head. So we all have, like, not just one goal or one task. We all have 10s or 20s or 30s or hundreds of tasks every day, especially people in the executive area or people in their own business that we want to achieve, and they're all things that we see as important to accomplish, right? And as urgent, but not really that important as they seem. We want to be able to have the ability to narrow down our goals or our tasks and identify out of those what I call our 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 wigs. Your wig. What is your wig at any one given time or in any one day? And we call it a wildly important goal. So out of all the goals that you have to achieve that day or that week, you want to only have 1 or 2 wigs that you're working on at any one time. Because when you work with things like wigs, a wildly important goal for businesses, and having a system to monitor progress on things like that, then and calendarizing or diarizing things, what happens is it grounds the energy to anchor that goal. And when you're focusing on 1 or 2 goals, it allows us to keep focused and clear, of a clear mind for where we're going. Mm. That's one way that we can prevent this whole escalation from occurring, is instead of trying to be superwoman or superman and achieve everything, which is always the case when we're in those kinds of positions of high achiever or CEO or manager or any of the positions that we're operating in. We want to be able to stay focused and to keep our minds clear so that we don't get all of this noise going on, because the noise that is going on contributes to that overwhelm, which then leads to the other things. So that's one of the ways that I suggest that people use, and we use it with our goal setting as well, is that what's your wig? What's your wig for the week, right? Your wildly important 1 or 2 goals that, if nothing else, you want to achieve those. If you achieve nothing else but only those, you will actually be happy. And, you know, in a situation like Latu is, when she's working, you have to be able to walk into a situation in the middle of a ward or in the middle of an admission and actually sum that up really fast. What are the 2 most important things here? Nothing else matters. What are the 2 most important things? So that's my suggestion. What about you, Tim?
Brilliant suggestion. You're identifying which are the key aspects of your day, of your week, or your month that you will give you the highest results, and that's your wig. I love that. What's your wig of the week? I've written that one down. That's so cool. That's brilliant. So when you're having a look at your wig of the week, I'm going to have a look at reframing your paradigm. Now, what do I mean by that? If your wig of the week is causing you stress, or you feel stressed by focusing on it. Why? Is your stress from that relating to fear? Is there a correlation between stress and fear? Let me explain. You've got a deadline of something to do, and you start feeling stressed about it. You're worried about it. Am I going to achieve it? Whether it's sales targets, whether it's a project, you start feeling stressed. Ask yourself, but why am I feeling stressed? If I can look at this stressor differently, change the paradigm, will I reduce the stress? Then ask yourself the question, what is my greatest fear? What am I worried about? What am I scared of? Because typically, that's where the stress comes in. I'm scared that if you're in a sales environment like I was for most of my life in hospitality, it's all around sales, so many jobs are, then my fear is I'm not going to hit my targets. So what's the consequence of not hitting my target? I'm not going to get my bonus. Or I'm stressing about it's December, annual performance review. I haven't managed to achieve my projects or everything that I was going to do. I'm stressing about it. Okay, so if you go into the performance review, what's the cause of the stress? Well, I'm worried that I'm going to be looked over for a promotion next year. So it's fear-based. There's a very, very strong correlation between fear and stress. And typically the stress is a result of your worry or your fear of the consequence of not achieving that project, that deadline, those sales figures. So if you can change the paradigm and say, now I understand why I'm stressed, it's actually because I'm fearful I'm going to lose income. All right, next stage. Break it down even further. The consequence of you not, let's just put in a sales example, you're not hitting your sales target, you're not going to get the bonus for Christmas. Just getting your salary, but you're not going to get that bonus. What's the consequence of that? Okay, so maybe the Christmas isn't going to have 20 presents under the tree, it's only got 10, or you're not going to be able to take the family away to that holiday. Okay, not nice, but what's the consequence of it? Are you going to lose your home? No. You're still going to have Christmas? Yeah. Are you going to die? No. Has anybody ever not hit their sales targets before and survived and come out the next year stronger? Yeah. So when you break it down and you work out, well, why am I scared of this? What is that fear-based? What am I worried about? And you acknowledge it and go, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen to me? What you'll start to do is you'll start to lessen the impact of the stress, because now you'll understand why you're stressed as opposed to running into full on. So my suggestion is, can you reframe the paradigm and ask yourself some questions? Why am I stressed about it? And what am I fearful of? What am I scared of? Once you identify that, the next one is, what's the worst thing that can happen? Can I reframe it and go, all right, now I understand that. You'll find that your stress starts to drop because your fear is the activator of the stress. I like reframing paradigms.
That's great, Tim. And I agree. There are many ways to reframe our paradigms, and it's important to look at them and actually ask, is this real? Is this fear or this conversation that's coming up for me, is it real? Is it truth? Or is it simply something that has occurred because I'm stressed about not achieving something, and it's an internal conversation that has started? And so, yes, the wig is great. I just want to add a few things now to that. Once you've got your wildly important goal, out of all the goals you have for a day, say, then I want to add that you use because you brought up fear, Tim, a brave thinking activation process, which is lead measurements. That is key indicators or the steps that you can see to accomplish the wildly important goal. So you break it down into steps or tasks. and they have to be measurable, high impact actions to take, and then with an ongoing process. So it's which is going to be predictable towards you achieving your WIG. Key steps to achieve this WIG. They need to be predictable or specific behaviors or specific outcomes of behaviors, and be high impact steps to reach your goals. And that will have an ongoing process. Then we want to go creation of a comprehensive scoreboard in some way, so that we can see actually how we're progressing. And a record of our progress towards that achievement. So say we've said, well, I want to do, if you're referring to sales like you did, Tim, that, I want to achieve $20,000 worth of sales by the end of the month. And so we break that down into maybe how many calls or how many visits to clients or how many Zooms will we be required to do. And what we want to do is have some kind of measurement tool. And it's so simple, used by top Fortune 500 companies and Deloitte and many others. Simply had a drawing or a chart where they marked, like a thermometer, where they marked it off every time they did they did a call or they achieved one of those tasks, so that at the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the month, we could see that tool was 3/4, filled in. And then if you're working with staff, scheduling regular meetings to check in on each other to see how with the progress that we're making and how everyone is coping. Or if we're solopreneurs, we can have a regular meeting with ourselves, reviewing our lead measurements and working with ourselves and assessing how we're going. So encouraging team or encouraging ourselves with different hats on to make new commitments once we've achieved or we've got on top of that particular goal. All helps us to have a structure and a support system to reduce the chance of it going from an everyday workplace to overwhelm and then burnout. Structures and systems are one of they're really mandatory to prevent this as well. And in my view, structures and systems, because otherwise we can get so involved in that paradigm and that overwhelm and that fear and everything else that we lose control of everything.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Breaking it right back down to the basics, which is where we all should be spending a lot more time, and creating those baby steps. You've got your wig of the week, I love it, and then breaking that down into those achievable steps. As the saying goes, how do you eat an elephant?
Exactly, one bite at a time. Yeah,
one bite at a time. You see the elephant, overwhelmed, absolutely stressed out. How am I meant to do this? Break the elephant down, and you take, okay, bite size. Absolutely brilliant. Again, changing the paradigm, changing the frame, or the what you're seeing, and breaking it down. And that's such an important one. But as you said, Karen, when you're in that position, very difficult to pull back and try and find that solution. This is where, even as a solopreneur, as the saying goes, I'm going to jump a little bit, my head's just jumping. As a solopreneur, the saying goes that there's never a self-made man. Never. Every successful businessman, entrepreneur, solopreneur has done it with other people. So you still need that support base. You still need a coach. You still need somebody to pull on, an accountability partner, somebody to go and bounce things off, to help you structure, break it down a little bit more. Even if you're a solopreneur, even if you're working from home or a home-based, a hybrid environment, or now fully at home. I've got friends who used to only be in the office. Now, because it's a pure desk-based, computer-based job, they're only at home. And I'm seeing the challenge there because there's a big disconnect
Mm.
between their accountability partner, their immediate boss. Because probably you'll find that the boss doesn't know how to manage the situation because they've not been trained or skilled on
Mm.
this change in the paradigm and the way.
Mm.
But in the end, even when you're supposedly on your own, you still need that accountability to break it down, take it to the
Yes.
simplest point, break that week down into the steps. Let's look at it from a different perspective. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. I'll just read the comments. Andreas says that's brilliant, such a good point, because seemingly strong people are expected to be invincible. Really good point, Andreas. And
Yeah.
exactly, whether they're men or women, men have also that intrinsic belief, and many women now holding positions of authority or management level. And he said, love the 2 points you made, Karen. Also spot on, Tim, about facing the fear, living for the moment and being able to adapt is something I've embraced. Great one, Andreas. I love your synopsis. Breaking it down is paramount. And Latu said, excellent examples of reframing paradigms. And Andreas has said, I need to get myself a wall chart. Yeah, or just a whiteboard. Just a whiteboard, and you can draw it yourself and rub it out and do a new one next week. You can just draw a thermometer with all the different, Latu would know how to do that, with all the different, marks on it, and then just fill in each one. Great tools that we can use to, when we decide that we're going to take control of our lives. So
Right.
remember, life doesn't happen to us. It happens through us. And we
Wow.
don't have to believe that things are causing us to go into a situation that's not healthy or not serving us. Actually, we have control of our lives, and the biggest thing we have control of, and you mentioned paradigms, Tim, the only thing actually we have full 100% control of is our thinking.
Yeah.
Is our thinking.
Yeah.
And in order to keep that pure and healthy, we require systems and structures and, as you say, accountability in people to support us to keep the unconscious mind as well as our conscious mind operating in a way that's healthy for us and serves our destination that we're aiming for, our vision. Having your vision as well and your why are two things that people can hang on to and help to bring us back to what's important to us.
That's right. It's hitting exactly on the topic with, was it Latu who was talking about her boss just giving the constant pressure and they don't have an appearance of caring. Well, they're under so much stress. So if you can go back down to your core why am I here? What's my purpose? Why am I around? And ensuring that your why is aligned to what you're doing will also reduce your stress and anxiety. And that's often what causes a stress, is that it's not aligned to who you are. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
It can be, because, right, here's the other perspective on stress. If you're looking at the stressor as a sign that something's wrong, that you're not going the right direction, it's purely a sign. When your body starts to ache, it's a sign. So observe it, be aware of it. When you fight against it, that takes a huge amount of energy and causes a huge amount of conflict in itself, which then adds to it, as opposed to turning around and going, why am I stressed about this? Back to those questions, exactly what Karen said as well, asking those key questions. Well, why am I stressed about it? That could purely mean a sign that you're going the wrong direction. Yeah, there's a lot that can be broken down to saying, well, how can I deal with this in the position I'm in when my boss isn't aware of it, my circumstances, and I see that other people have got very similar issue. And I'm talking to corporates in the realm of the bosses not understanding, purely because they're either in the position or they are not receptive or knowledgeable enough to identify the stresses. So it's up to us each is an individual instead of pointing a finger. It's my boss's fault. It's the guy who does the rostering fault. It's their fault, the government's fault, the spouse's fault, the kid's fault, the dog's fault, the weather's fault. No, it's got to start here, man. If you're not, you can change all of that by how you're seeing it. Yeah.
And another way to look at fear, when fear comes up, there's two ways to look at it. And one, it could be that you're afraid of something happening that might endanger you. Definitely, if you're being chased by a coyote, then I would think that we would be fearful. However, often fear, when we decide to challenge ourselves for something big, when fear comes up and says, you can't do that, or if you do it, you're going to fail, or if you do it, you're going to cause people you're going to feel embarrassed or whatever. When fear comes up at that point, often it means you're on the green growing edge of going from where you are now to something bigger and better, and achieving more of what you're closer to what you're capable of. So it's a bit difficult to know, well, what do I listen to? It's a bit like our intuition comes up all the time. When I was talking with now his name's just gone from me. We had the guy, anyway, I was talking to someone recently, and he talked about our intuition is like our natural compass.
Yes.
And it is. Because when our intuition comes up and tells us something, we either listen to it and we change our action or our path or our route accordingly, or we ignore it and we say, oh, that's just my fear, or that's, rubbish. And it's hard to know the difference between what's our paradigm and what's that internal voice that's not serving our vision or not serving us to move forward, and what is our intuition that we really want to listen to. The voice of truth speaks to everyone, speaks to every one of us every single day. It's as loud as our willingness to listen. Quote.
Wow, profound. Stunning.
So all of this is learning, is increasing our level of awareness so that we learn more about ourselves, so that we can move forward in our lives and we can achieve our potential, or a lot more of it. They say we only use something like 10 to 15% of our full capacity as average humans. And we want to make sure that we don't get anywhere near that place that you got to, Tim, of burnout. We don't even want to get to that anxious or the overwhelm or the anxiety if we can help it. So increasing our level of awareness around all of these things, our mental faculties, our vision, our why, our purpose, our goals, and how to achieve them and which ones are the most important. And as we said, breaking a goal for the week down to tasks, the week for the week down to tasks, and they have to be, realistic. You want them to be achievable and realistic, and you want them to be the SMART goals, measurable. That a lot of people talk about these things.
Talk about them and doing them are vastly different. And we can attend as many workshops or webinars or streams as you want, but if you're not going to take something away from it and actually apply, then you'll remain in that stress state. And we unfortunately see that a lot of the time. So it's a key thing is finding something that you've resonated with here and taking it further. But I want to just latch on something that we've both spoken about very, very briefly. And just to pull on a little bit more in the last minute, I'm not sure how much time we've got left.
Probably a couple of minutes, that's it.
And that is to say, don't try and do this alone.
That's right. I agree, Tim. Most of us go away from things like seminars. Sorry to interrupt. I'm going to say this. Most people go to seminars and boot camps and weekends and all sorts of things learn online, go away and think, okay, I can do this myself. And 95 or 99% of people last in that thinking for a very short period of time, and then our paradigms come in and they're like gravity. They pull us back to where we were before in our comfort zones, our security blanket, and our humanness. That's our humanness. Our brains are, and our minds and our unconscious minds are wired to think on the negative side and bring up the dialogue that does not serve us moving forward. So yes, Tim, carry on.
Yeah, it's exactly as Latu said here, accountability. You need an accountability partner. You need a coach. You need somebody who's going to say, okay, now what are you going to do about this? Let's journey on this together. And become as your accountability partner, as your coach, as your guide. Why do you think all successful sports people have got a coach?
That's right.
The sportsman knows more and is more skilled than the coach, but they need the coach to identify your foot is 1 centimeter too close to the line when the tennis player or the golfer or whatever. You need that other perspective to help you in your journey. Doing it alone is going to keep you where you are or where you were, and is extremely difficult to move forward. As Einstein said, and I'm not going to quote him, I'll paraphrase it, that you are not able to create this new version based upon the information that got you to where you are now. You can't keep using the same information. It's going to keep you in the same place. You need to adopt and take on this new information that's being shared or taught to you, or paradigms or thinking or wigs. You need to take it on in order to move forward. Otherwise, you're just going to be in exactly the same stressed, on your way to burnout state. So that's a key part of what keeps people stressed, is that they're in that same position consistently without taking on the new information and doing something about it to move forward out of that stressful environment or stressful state. So yeah, critical. You're not alone. Don't try and do this alone. As the saying goes, as a coach, you sometimes need to cut a check for speed. Get that expertise to help you get there. Yeah, my final say.
Thank you, Tim. And you're right, Einstein said a problem cannot be solved at the frequency of the problem. One has to change our frequency to see the solution for a problem, a different way of thinking. And I like to finish as well on this note about our purpose or our why. And the quote goes like this: know thy purpose. 800 years ago, a Persian poet named Rumi, who's one of my favorite people I quote, I always sign off with another quote that he has. A poet named Rumi said this: it's as if a king has sent you into a foreign, distant land with one specific task to accomplish. We're talking about knowing our purpose here. With one specific task to accomplish. You could accomplish 100 other things, but in the end, if you have failed to accomplish the one thing for which you have been sent, in the end, it will be as if you have accomplished nothing. This is talking about our why or our purpose. Why are we here on this earth? And I think it's a great thing to look at whenever we're chewing over what's going on in our life, and are we happy, and are we fulfilled, and where are we going? To look at that why, that purpose. What are we here in at this time, in this decade, in this particular area we live, with the people who surround us? Why are we here now? What are we here to achieve?
Beautiful. So true. I can relate to that. That was my journey. That was my story. As soon as I walked out of that stressful, high anxiety position, that's exactly what I did. Turn around and ask myself, what am I actually here to achieve? What is my purpose? Why am I around? And that led me on a most amazing journey. As we said right at the beginning, at that moment in time, very anxious, very stressful decision to do. But looking back, I knew it then, but I now understand it. That was the best decision that I could have ever made. And it's those
things that get thrown at us.
Right. That's the story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's great. We're winded up now. We've got Andrea said, when I feel like nothing is moving, sometimes I switch off and walk along the Norfolk shore where I live. Wonderful. Once I've walked so far, I had to bus it back, but I felt refreshed. Great thing to do. Andrea says, thank you so much, Karen and Tim. This has been a reminder. We all need reminding sometimes. And you are so right. We can't do this alone. We need people, but the right ones who truly care. And Latu says, thank you, Karen and Tim, for your thought-provoking discussion. So thank you for attending and also contributing. It makes a big difference to us when we have people making a comment and contributing and coming back with a comment when we share. So on that note, Tim, thank you so much. Once again, it's been my honour and pleasure to have you here and chat with you on this really important subject that we call them, what's the title? The Awakened Dialogue. We call our sessions the Awakened Dialogue.
Yeah,
so
Awakened Dialogue.
We will have another one on a similar topic. Until then, thank you for coming. We will sign off now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. As always, absolute pleasure. Thank you for everybody for joining us, and for those watching the recording. We'll see you in a fortnight.
Yes. Bye for now.